Hello everyone, welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking about functions. Our goal today is to learn how functions work in Python 3. But before we do that, we're going to talk about, well, what are functions, then really dive into the functions of Python 3. A function, what is a function? A function is a block of organized reusable code that is usually used to perform a single and related action. So in many programming languages, there are built-in functions that we can use in our programs. But also, we get to create our own functions when we think of an amazing solution to a problem or something related like that. They might have different names, so similar concepts or terminologies that you may see in other languages might be methods, subroutines, and or procedures. Before we really go into the nitty-gritty of functions in Python 3, I want to touch up on the differences between a mathematical function and a programming function. A mathematical function relates an input to an output. Therefore, it creates a relationship of inputs and output with the rule that one input can only have one output. This is a very important rule for mathematical functions. For example, when I try to use a square root operator, I cannot create a mathematical function by using a square root, because a square root will take a number and produce two different outputs. So that means it is taking one input and mapping two different outputs with that input. And that is fundamentally not allowed in a mathematical function. But with a mathematical function, you can have multiple inputs pointing towards or mapping towards the same output. In the programming world, your functions don't have those restrictions. I want you to think of functions as a self-contained module where they solve a single and specific problem. They solve a single problem. So functions in programming, right? A program may execute a function call, and once it does, it enters the function and executes all the instruction found inside, top to bottom. Then the program leaves the function and returns to your program's flow. So it goes back to where your own program is. And if there's any data computed and returned by the function that you called, you can use that now inside your own program. And that is why we create functions in programming. So let's talk about functions in Python 3. Functions in Python 3, well, there are built-in functions, and we have met a whole bunch of them. So for example, we have seen the length, print, and even the round function. We can import modules to access even more awesome functions that's already been pre-made. For example, we've used the math and random modules to increase functionality in our code. Lastly, and this is the basis of this unit, we get to create our own functions. We have been solving a lot of great problems, and what we want to do is put that inside a function that we can call upon day to day. So we want to create our function because it's reusable. If you have created an amazing solution to a problem that you keep on coding and repeating that code over and over again, you can reuse that by putting it into a function and maybe importing it or copying that entire function over to your new programs. Algorithms are made and defined by functions because if you have a great solution to a problem that you wrote your instructions down for, that we can call an algorithm. And ultimately, this helps us clean our code. If we have these different amazing solutions bundled up and packaged inside a function, we're now striving towards having clean code. And lastly, these functions serve a single purpose of solving a single problem. That's what makes functions single serving. So let's look at a template of how to define a function in Python 3. It starts with a new keyword that we're going to learn, which is called def for define. We're going to define a function with this function name. It can be anything. Make sure to follow the same rules for variable creation when you're creating a label for functions. We can have any number of arguments. You can have 0, you can have 1, and you can have a lot. Right? This is going to depend on the function that you create. We use triple quotations to help us document our function, and which we call a function docstring. And so we write a purpose of what it does. We talk about the arguments it takes and the possible value that it may return with this function. And inside, everything's indented once, 4 spaces, or a single tab. We write our function code here, whether it be iterations, conditionals, or even something basic that a function might do. It is all contained in this same indentation level. And after that's done, if you'd like, optionally, you can return a value, a single value or a single data value that we can send back to our program flow. And what I like to do is just write a comment at the end and saying, hey, this is the end of the function, and I've now exited by going back to the previous level of my indentation. Okay, so with this template set, I want to show you a nice little custom function that is very simple, very easy to understand, but it kind of captures the essence of what a function should be. So here I'm defining a function called square, and it's going to take a single argument, and I've labeled that argument as num. So when you create an argument for functions, you could call it anything, much like creating a label for a variable. In this case, I just decided to call it a num. With triple quotation mark, I just wrote a single, nice, sweet and simple documentation that says this function will return the square of num, which is our input argument there. And it's going to return, since this calculation is so simple, I'm just going to return the multiple of num, the argument, by itself again. All right, and that's the end of the function. Now at this point out of my program, I have defined this function called square. So in my program afterwards, I can use that function to say, hey, I have a variable called value, and it's going to be assigned with the result of square, the function square, with an input argument of 10. So now 10 will replace this whole argument holder called num, and this is going to be 10, and I'm going to return the result of 10 multiplied by 10. That's going to give me 100. Now value has been assigned with the value of 100. Therefore, if I were to print that value, the output should be 100 in our interpreter. And this is the essence of creating functions for Python. Right? We organize a single solution, a nice and tidy solution, into a function, and we can call upon it whenever we need to. All right. So that's how functions work in Python. We'll be going through multiple ways to create functions and solving many different problems by using functions in our future video. Thank you for watching, and stay classy.